The big guns continued to bombard the town from near and far. Over the course of 2 days, there were still some Soviet army units left in Haditch, some of which had arrived from the nearby forests. A fierce battle was pitched near the bridge that led from Haditch to Veprik. The Germans bombarded it quite often from the air and bombarded it with their heavy artillery. A tremendous traffic jam had formed near the bridge, consisting of soldiers, refugees, and cars, all headed for the forest. The German bombs were not at all precise. The bridge lay unharmed. However, on the third and fourth days, confusion and panic took hold everywhere. The cemetery lay near the bridge, and Aharon Ginsburg, who spent those days sitting in the Steibel, could hear the sounds of battle. A few bombs that fell not far from the cemetery sent fierce shockwaves blasting through the air, but the attendant did not leave his spot there, and so we find him sitting at the long table flipping through a sacred text. He heard the rising tumult near the bridge, the shouts, and the shots fired. He knew that all the Jews of Haditch, old and young alike, were expecting impending days of terror. Everything, literally everything, hung by a thread. Everywhere, the fascists took over. The lives of the Jews hung in the balance. However, Aharon Ginsburg had but a single fortress and shelter in his world, the Alter Rebbe. The Rebbe was a safe harbor, the shield that protected our people throughout their diaspora, and most certainly shielded the Jews of Haditch. Ginsburg believed that so long as the eternal flame burned over the grave of Alter Rebbe, there was some connection between the eternal light and the scattered, disjointed nation. It came time to recite Mincha prayers. Ginsburg opened the doors of the Holy Ark. He prayed standing up with tremendous concentration. He stood there all alone as he prayed. He was the sole member of the congregation before the open ark. There were Torah scrolls in the ark, each standing on its squat legs, wrapped in its velvet wrapper. Ginsburg could see the letters squirming about where they adorned the parchment, each letter with a life of its own, each crown and tassel with its various incarnations and ramifications. Outside, the shots rang out, the heavy artillery raged, and the engines roared. In that solitary building, a modest, splendid silence reigned. There were lights flickering in the darkness. Ginsburg began Ma'ariv prayers. But what was he doing, that madman? It was neither Shabbat nor a holiday today, and yet, as though it was not enough that he had wrapped himself in his talit, he also donned his white kittel, opened the doors of the ark, and began invoking divine judgment and mercy. May the Lord have pity and forgive our sins and not destroy us. He was celebrating Yom Kippur today, the holiest Shabbat of the year. Tears streamed from his eyes, dampening his black beard, in which certain strands of old age had begun to flicker of late. All that night, and the next morning, the battle continued to rage in Haditch. On the 17th of September, the Germans entered the town. At the house where the Fagins were staying, Vasya was the first to break the foul news. "Mother, the fascists are coming!" the child's voice could be heard saying. He stood in the hallway, peeking through a crack in the shutters. Through the window, Tamar saw 3 German soldiers in the neighboring yard, armed from head to toe. They were terrifying giants with huge boots, armed with rifles and hand grenades. In the neighboring yard, a military kitchen was emitting its smoke. An officer stepped into the yard and shouted something in a foreign language, shouting and pointing with his hand. It seemed that this yard was deemed suitable for stationing a piece of heavy artillery. About half hour later, the kitchen was moved and the big gun was placed along the slope. It soon began to fire away. With each shot, the earth trembled. The windows sank within their frames, and the entire house seemed to virtually fall to pieces. The day passed, limping along on its wounded legs. The doors and shutters were closed tight. Not a soul came or went. Chaim Yaakov Feigen remained hidden in the attic, his lips whispering selections from sailors. The house was shut up. All the houses were shut up and locked tight.